Hey guys, sorry for the interruption. So I'm pretty sure search completed reading rule 3C. So I'm just gonna read it again. If a subject does not appear in front of the second verb, a comma is generally unnecessary. Example, Morty thought quickly but still did not answer correctly. Sometimes a comma in this situation is necessary to avoid confusion. Where is the confusion? I saw that she was busy and prepared to leave. It becomes clear with the comma. I saw that she was busy and prepared to leave. In the end, we go back to the previous rule that we were using. Okay, here, when we use connectors. Okay, so we use connectors to make it clear. Without a comma, the reader is liable to think that she was the one who was prepared to leave. Okay. Kudos. Let's go for 3D. Okay. So let's see. Writer, can you help us with 3D?
Okay, teacher. A comma is placed before the word because only if needed for clarity. Example, the twins attended Tulane because their parents went there. This sentence clearly conveys that the main reason the twins went to Tulane was because their parents attended Tulane. The twins didn't attend Tulane because their parents went there. This sentence is ambiguous. We're not sure whether they didn't go to Tulane because they wanted to go somewhere other than where their parents went to college, or whether the twins did go to Tulane, but for reasons other than that their parents went there. The twins didn't attend Tulane because their parents went there. With the comma before because, the sentence more clearly conveys that the twins decided a college other than the one their parents attended.
Thank you, writer. Yes, it's a long explanation, but there's a reason behind. You add the comma to make that pause because you want to separate each idea. If not, it becomes a run-on and you may get confused, right? Any questions, guys? I'm always gonna ask you if you have questions before I continue, okay? So if you don't have any questions, we can just go on, okay? All right, 4A. Camila, can you help me with this one?
4A. When starting a sentence with a dependent clause, use a comma after it. Example, if you are not sure about this, comma, let me know now. Follow the same policy with introductory phrases. Example, having finally arrived in town, comma, we went shopping. However, comma, if the introductory phrase is clear and brief, 3 or 4 words, the comma is optional. Example, when in town, we go shopping, but always add a comma if it would avoid confusion. Example, last Sunday, comma, evening classes were cancelled. The comma prevents a misreading. When an introductory phrase begins with a preposition, a comma may not be necessary, even if the phrase contains more than 3 or 4 words. Example, into the sparkling crystal ball he gazed. If such phrase contains more than one preposition, a comma may be used unless a verb immediately follows the phrase. Example, Between your house and Main Street and my house on Grand Avenue, comma, the mayor's mansion stands proudly. Between your house on Main Street and my house on Grand Avenue is the mayor's mansion.
Major's management. So, any questions about this rule 4A? Thank you, Camila. So there's different ways of using the comma, right? Again, we're being prompted to be careful whenever we have prepositions. We don't want to have small run-ons. And I'm pretty sure at some point you have used these type of information. Okay. If there's no questions, I'm going to continue to the next one, okay? So let's see. Oh, this is our short ones. Let me read 4B. 4B. Okay. But when a comma is unnecessary, when the sentence starts with an independent clause followed by a dependent clause. Example, let me know now if you're not sure about this. So it's not necessary? Really? But why? What's going on in this example, guys? Because we have an independent clause followed by a dependent clause. But something is happening here. Something is helping us not to use the comma. What is it? Do you know? Can you see it? Search. Writer, can you see? There's a single word that is helping us not to use a comma. What is it? Joe? Rod? If. If is the connector that is helping us not to use a comma. Simple as that. Okay. So, Joe, can you help us with 5A?
Teacher everything?
Yes, please.
Okay. Use commas to set off non-essential word, clause, and phrases. See who, that, which, rule, to be, incorrect, will, who is my sister, shut the door, correct, Jill, who is my sister, shut the door, incorrect, the actor, knowing it was late, hurried home, correct, and the actor, knowing it was late, hurried home. In the preceding example, note the comma after sister and late. Okay, non-essential. Okay, word, clause,
Hello?
and phrase that. Okay.
I don't know if everyone can hear, but I cannot hear anything.
Okay.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, teacher.
Good. So we continue?
In the preceding example, note the comma after sister and late, non-essential words, clauses, and phrases that occur in mid-sentence must be enclosed by commas. The closing comma is called a positive comma. Many readers forget to add this important comma following are two instances of the need for a positive comma, which on are more nouns. Incorrect, my best friend Joe arrived. Correct, my best friend Joe arrived. Incorrect, there's items above a pen and paper were on the table. Incorrect, the three items above a pen and paper were on the table.
Thank you, Joe. I know it's a long explanation, but in reality, to get to know this rule actually is very simple. If you're describing something or anyone or a place, whatever, and all of a sudden you lost track, who am I talking or what am I talking about? You do that pause. In this case, Joe, comma, all right. It's just to give you that heads up what we're talking about. There's nothing wrong. You just surround that word or even a small description, an adjective and a noun. It doesn't matter. It could have a title. You surround it by a commas, comma, dot, 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 comma. That's it. Just to make that explanation, okay? Questions? Okay, so I know it's a lot of information. Don't worry, I will give you these presentations so you can have it and review everything that we're discussing, okay? Five B, and this is a long one. So any volunteers? Rod, you want to try it?
Yo, teacher.
Okay. Audrey? Yeah.
Rule 5B. If something or someone is sufficiently identified, the descriptions that follows is considered non-essential and should be surrounded by commas. Example, Freddy, who has a limp, was in an auto accident. If we already know with Freddy is meant, the description is not essential. The boy who has a limp was in an auto accident. We don't know which boy is meant without further description. Therefore, no commas are used. This leads to a persistent problem. Look at the following sentence. Example, my brother Bill is here. My brother Bill is here. Now, see how adding two commas change that sentence meaning. My brother Bill is here. Careful writers and readers understand that the first sentence means I have more than one brother. The comma is in the second sentence mean that Bill is my only brother. Why in the first sentence, Bill is essential information. It identifies which of my two or more brothers I am speaking of. This is why no comma enclose Bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the second sentence, Bill is non-essential information. Whom else but Bill could I mean, hence the commas. Comma misuse is nothing to take lightly. It can lead to a train wreck like this. Mark Twain's book, Tom Sawyer, is a delight. Okay. Because the commas, the sentence states that Twain wrote only one book. In fact, he wrote more than 2 dozen of them. Okay. So, yes, it could be considered a problem because to some very experienced readers and writers, you're letting people know that Mark Twain only wrote one book. But we can also talk about just one book in a specific. So we need to be careful. In the end, you're the writer. You are going to entertain the reader. That's the beauty of it. Just as the previous example, 5A, in this case, we're doing the same, surrounding a description by commas. 5A talk about surrounding a noun, an adjective and a noun. In this case, we're talking about the description. Okay. Details. Thank you, Audrey. 6A, use a comma after certain words that introduce a sentence, such as well, yes, why, hello, hey, etc. Examples, why? I can't believe this. No, you can't have $1. Easy peasy, right? B, use commas to set off expressions that interrupt the sentence flow. Nevertheless, after all, by the way, on the other hand, however, etc. Example, I am, by the way, very nervous about this. And also, guys, we can always have these words or these expressions in the beginning of a statement, not necessarily in between. But what I'm trying to say is that we can always start a statement with these expressions. Nevertheless, comma, dot, dot, dot. After all, dot, 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 comma, dot, dot, dot. By the way, comma, dot, dot, dot. In this case, they're using this example and doing it in between, right? 6C, in general, use commas to set off the word to mid-sentence. However, it is usually not necessary to proceed to with a comma at the end of a sentence. Examples, my sister too loves artichokes. My sister loves artichokes too. But be careful on this one. When we use to in between, yes, we're surrounded by commas. At the end, no. It's just part of it, part of the statement. You're not doing a pause. Seven. Writer, can you help me with number 7?
Use commas to set up the name, nickname, term of endearment, or title of a person directly addressed. Examples. Will you, Aisha, do that assignment for me? Yes, old friend, I will. Good day, Captain.
Thank you, writer. So we use commas to set off the name, nickname, term of endearment, or titleable person directly addressed. In this case, we're talking about more specifics. But in the end, we're following some rules that are repeating. 8. Let me see who's missing. Any volunteers? Mauricio, do you want to try 8?
Sure. Use a comma to separate the day of the month from the year. And what most people forget, always put one after the year also. Example, it was in the sun's June 5, 2019, edition. No comma is necessary for just the month and year. Example, it was in a June 2019 article. A comma may be advisable with other incomplete dates. Examples, our planning meetings will take place on Friday, November 13 and Thursday, December 10. Our planning meetings will take place on November 13 and December 10.
Correct. So we are, in these last examples, we're separating the day from the month. We don't have a year. That's why we don't use an additional comma. As Eddie said, for the last example, since we don't have any additional information, there's no need for a comma. And we see it here in this example. It was in a June 2019 article or 2019 article. Tomato, okay? Any questions, guys? I know there's a lot of rules for commas. And remember, that's why I left this explanation here on top. Commas indicate a brief pause. They're not as final as periods, but is the most or are the most frequently used punctuation marks. So that's why we have a lot of examples for commas. 9. Let me see. Fairly short, right? So, okay. Camila, can you help us with number 9 and 10?
Sure. Rule number 9. Use a comma to separate a city from its state, and remember to put one after the state also. Examples, I'm from Akron, Ohio, area. Rule number 10. Traditionally, if a person's name is followed by Sir or Junior, a comma follows the last name. Martin Luther King Jr., the comma is no longer considered mandatory. However, if a comma does precede Sir or Junior, another comma must follow the entire name when it appears mid-sentence. Correct. All money, sir, is here. Correct. All money, sir, is here. Incorrect. All money, sir, point or period is here.
Thank you, Cami. So this is interesting, guys, and we need to pay close attention. But before we jump into rule 10, let's recap rule number 9. It's fairly easy. Use comma to separate a city from its state. And remember to put one after the state. Also, I'm from Akron, Ohio area. So you surround, in this case, the state by commas. Fairly simple. Now, rule number 10. So we have senior and junior in abbreviations, and we always keep those abbreviations with a period. But this is a tricky part. The first one, L. Mooney Senior is here. L. Mooney Senior is here. So it's just a complete statement. We're not stopping to breathe. The second example, Al Mooney Sr. is here. We're doing a small pause to create more emphasis. Now, check it out. Al Mooney Sr. is here. But I'm doing a pause, but check it out. This is the correct way. El Mooney Sr. is here. El Mooney Sr. is here. Can you tell the difference? You are actually not doing a stop. Senior is here. Senior is here. El Mooney Sr. is here. It doesn't make sense. Now, El Mooney Sr. is here. Al Mooney Sr. is here. It requires quite some practice, okay? I have read many articles, books, and audiobooks. So I can tell that this difference right away. If you have any questions, please let me know, guys. But don't stay quiet. Talk to me. Ryder, Joe, Mauricio, Rod, Camila. Any questions?
No, teacher.
No? Joe? Okay. 11. Similarly, use commas to enclose degrees or titles used with names. Al Mooney, MD, is here. Simple. Medical doctor. Okay. Let's continue. Okay, rule 12A. This is a long one, guys. So any volunteers? Ryder, can you help us? 12A?
Okay, teacher. Use commas to introduce or interrupt direct quotations of dialogue or text. Examples, he said, I don't care. Why? I asked, don't you care? Toni Morrison wrote, if there's a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. This rule is optional with one-word quotations. Example, he said, stop. If a quotation is preceded by introductory words such as that, whether, if, a comma is normally not needed. Example, was it James Baldwin who wrote that nothing can be changed until it's faced? A comma is not necessary to introduce titles of articles, chapters, songs, etc. Example, I recently read an interesting article titled Poor Woman's Journey.
Thank you, Ryder. So again, here in this part, if a quotation is preceded by introductory words such as that, whether, if, a comma is normally not needed. Remember, we talk about an example with if. In this case, we have that and whether or whether. So in this case, the example was a James Baldwin who wrote that nothing can be changed until it is faced. Okay, so not needed. Those words are helping us. Okay. And of course, we will talk about quotation marks. Okay. And go deeply in detail because we're going to talk about quotation marks and commas at the same time. Rule 12b, if the quotation comes before he said, she wrote, they reported, Dana insisted, or a similar attribution, end the quoted material with a comma, even if it is only one word. Examples, I don't care, he said. Stop, he said. Okay, and we are using quotation marks, guys. So in the end, but check it out, where is the comma? Look at the quotation, look at the comma. So the comma is before your last quotation mark. Not only we have to be careful on using the commas, but we have to be careful also in the position of the comma, the order. Okay? Questions, guys? So we're talking about third person. He said, she wrote, or plural, they reported. Dana insisted. Okay? We're talking about what other people said. C. Okay, let me see. Who can help me? Rob, can you help me with 12C?
Okay. If a quotation functions as a subject or object in a sentence, it might not need a comma. Examples is I don't care all you can say to me. Saying stop the car was a mistake.
Okay, so this one is fairly easy, right? If a quotation functions as a subject or object in a sentence, it might not need a comma. Again, we're talking about quotation marks. Is I don't care all you can say to me. Saying stop the car was a mistake. So we don't need commas here because we're talking about quotations. 12D. Audrey, can you help me with 12D? Audrey, can you help me with 12D?
Yes, teacher. Which 12C? Teacher,
Yes.
12C. If, no, 12D. If a quoted questions and in mean sentence, the quotation mark replace a comma. Will you still be my friend? La donna asked.
LaDonna asked, okay?
La donna asked.
LaDonna, LaDonna.
La donna.
Yes, in Spanish sounds bad. La donna. La donna. Okay, LaDonna asked. Okay, so if a quoted question ends in mid-sentence, the question mark replaces a comma. Will you still be my friend? But it's a question in quotations. LaDonna asked. But again, We don't need a comma. The question mark is replacing the comma. That's what it's telling us. 13. Joe, can you help us with 13?
Use a comma to separate a statement from a question. Example, I can go. Can I?
Yes, that's correct. Easy peasy. I can go. Can I? Okay. Mauricio, 14.
Use a comma to separate contrasting parts of a sentence. That is my money, not yours.
Yes. Use a comma to separate contrasting parts of a sentence. That is my money, not yours. But always think that you are pausing, guys, when you speak. Remember that commas help us to separate ideas, not to get confused, avoid run-ons, and give emphasis to your speaking, right? All right, we're almost finished. Rule 15A. A lot of things to explain. Camila, can you help us with 15A?
Use a comma before and after certain introductory words or terms, such as namely, that is, IA, AJ, including and for instance, when they are followed by a series of items. Examples. You might be required to bring many items. For example, sleeping bags, pants, and warm clothing. Also the 15B, teacher.
Yes, please. Let's do it.
Okay. Rule 15B. Comma should precede the term etc. and enclose it if it is placed mid-sentence. Example, sleeping bags, comma, pants, comma, warm clothing, comma, etc., comma, are in the tent.
Correct. So any questions about these last ones? Thank you, Camila. Any questions on these last two rules? Very particular ones, except for 15B, because that's what we are most familiar with, etc. Sleeping bags, pants, warm clothing, etc. are in the tent. Don't forget, etc. is an abbreviation. So you have to use a period, comma, are in the tent. It's very similar with EG. So, okay, we have a note. The abbreviation IE means that is, EG means for example, and this is Latin, guys. Okay. Any questions about commas? Yes, teacher, that was a lot of rules on commas. I know. Periods and commas are the most used. Punctuation. No questions, guys?
No, teacher.
Semicolons. Okay, semicolons. So what's a semicolon? Okay, it's no accident that a semicolon is a period atop a comma. So we have a period on top of a comma. That's what it means, atop. Like commas, semicolons include an audible pause, slightly longer than a commas, but short, of a period's full stop. So it's in between. Semicolons have other functions too, but first, a caveat. Avoid the common mistake of using a semicolon to replace a colon. So that's a very, very common mistake. Sometimes we think we are supposed to use a full colon, and instead we use a semicolon or vice versa. So we have to be careful. Incorrect. I have one goal to find her. I have one goal to find her. Okay. Of course, we haven't touched colons. We're only talking about semicolons. But let's go into it. Rule number one. Rod, can you help us with rule number one? This is interesting, guys. Pay attention.
A semicolon can replace a period if the writer wished to narrow the gap between two closely linked sentences. Examples: call me tomorrow. You can give me an answer 10. We have paid our dues. We expect all the privileges listed in the contract.
Thank you, Rod. Questions, guys? So pretty much what it's telling us, we're talking about the same thing, same subject. We're talking about exactly the same direction. But let's talk about different course of actions about the same topic. Call me tomorrow. You can give me an answer then. We have paid our dues. We expect all the privileges listed in the contract. Rule 1B. Joe?
Avoid a semicolon when a dependent clause comes before an independent clause. Incorrect. Although they tried, they failed. Incorrect. Okay. Although they tried, they failed.
So in few words, we are confusing a semicolon with a comma. Be careful. Whenever you use a comma, but do not confuse a semicolon with a comma. Perhaps we need to go back and check our dependent clause and our independent clause. But I believe the examples are pretty clear, right? Rule number 2, Mauricio.
Use a semicolon before such words and terms as namely, however, therefore, that is, I.e., for example, e.g., for instance, etc. When they introduce a complete sentence, it is also preferable to use a comma after these words and terms. Example, write any 2 items. However, sleeping bags and tents are in short supply.
Yes, thank you, sir. So we're doing a combo. We're talking about using a semicolon. At the same time, we're using what we know about transition words, namely, however, therefore, that is, so on and so on and so on. We use those words to do transitions. Now, we are talking about the same subject, 2 actions about the same subject. Bring any 2 items, however, comma, sleeping bags and tents are in short supply. Any questions, guys? It looks confusing, but it's not. You will find it very, very easy. Let's continue. Rule 3. Any volunteers? Yes, Ryder. Thank you, sir.
Use a semicolon to separate units of a series when one or more of the units contain commas. Incorrect. The conference has people who have come from Moscow, Idaho, Springfield, California, Alamo, Tennessee, and other places as well. Note that with only commas, that sentence is hopeless. Correct. The conference has people who have come from Moscow, Idaho, Springfield, California, Alamo, Tennessee, and other places as well. Note that a semicolon rather than a comma after Tennessee is correct because and other places as well also constitutes an unit of the series. Correct. Dante Martinez, a registered nurse, Susan Brooks, a dietitian, and Chen Ling Go, a physical therapist, attends the meeting. In this case, attend the meeting is not a unit of the series and therefore is preceded only by a comma.
Thank you, sir. And I know it looks a little bit complex, but it's not. Look at the first example, the incorrect example. The conference has people who have come from Moscow, Idaho, Springfield, California. If you just leave the commas, it looks like you are just giving examples. You're not separating. In the correct one, we can see it. The conference has people who have come from Moscow, Idaho, Springfield, California, Alamo, Tennessee, and other places as well. Okay, now it makes sense, Cesar. Yes. And as writer mentioned, note that a semicolon rather than a comma after Tennessee is correct because in other places as well also constitutes a unit of the series. Dante Martinez, a registered nurse, Susan Brooks, a dietitian, and Xiang Ling Ko, a physical therapist, attended the meeting. Okay, so in the first example, we talk about cities and states. Now we're talking about people and professions. Easy. Questions, guys? And I believe this is the most common example for semicolons. Okay. At least that's probably the most examples I have used in the past, in my case. Okay, so rule 4, Audrey.
A semicolon may be used between independent clause joined by a connector such as and, but, or, nor, etc. when one or more commas appear in the first clause. When I finish here, and I will be glad to help you, and that is a promise I will keep.
Thank you, Audrey. So a semicolon may be used between independent clauses joined by a connector, okay, such as and, but, or, nor, etc. when one or more commas appear in the first clause. When I finish here, I will soon, I will be glad to help you. And that is a promise I will keep. Okay. So you have independent clauses. That's what it's telling us. And remember, a clause is an idea, it's an expression, a description. So we can use those tools whenever we create our paragraphs to show the correct usage of semicolons. 5, do not capitalize ordinary words after a semicolon. Incorrect. I am here. You are over there. Okay. Correct. I am here. You are over there. Okay. But check it out. We're not talking about pronunciation or structural order in the statement, whatever. We're talking about capital letters. Okay. And this is very, very awkward because we are used to use capital letters in most punctuation forms. In this case, you don't have to capitalize. Okay. This is a tough one, actually. Any questions about semicolons, guys? Before we go into columns. Okay. Questions about semicolons?
Teacher,
Yes.
no usamos semicolons cuando en las mayúsculas, ¿verdad?
En este caso,
Ajá.
no, te está diciendo que no tienes que usar mayúscula después de un semicolon.
Ah, ya.
¿Sí?
Ya.
Okay, good. Okay, kids. Now, it's already almost time. Les debo tiempo. Now, I apologize for being late. I will call the internet company so that we don't have these again, I promise. Now, do we continue, guys, so that we can cover more information, or we can stop here? Up to you. Let me know. What do you think? Only 10 minutes more?
Only 10 minutes, teacher.
Okay, everyone agrees?
Yes, teacher.
Awesome. Mao, Rod, Ryder, Joe,
Yes, teacher.
yes, teacher. Okay, yeah, awesome. All right, kids, let's do this. Columns. Wow. Rule 1A, use a column to introduce an item or a series of items. Do not capitalize the first item after the column unless it is a proper noun. Wow, wow. So check it out. And this is a very common mistake. I have done it in the past, guys. Examples, you know what to do. Practice. You may be required to bring many things: sleeping bags, pants, utensils, and warm clothing. I want the following items: butter, sugar, and flour. I need an assistant who can do the following: input data, write reports, and complete tax forms. So all of these cases, we don't use capital letters after columns. But remember, if you have a proper noun, yes, or proper name, like what? Yes, like a title, guys. Like a city's name, or state, country, institutional name, so on and so on. Rule 1B. Okay, Joe, can you help me with rule 1B for Collins?
Mm, okay. A capital letter generally does not introduce a word, phrases, or incomplete sentence following a colon. Example, he got what he worked for. A promotion, he got what he worked for. A promotion that paid a higher pay.
Thank you, Joe. So a capital letter does not introduce a word, phrase, or incomplete sentence following a column. Okay, so pretty much a continuation of rule number 1. Rule 2. Mau?
Sorry, teacher, did you call my name?
Mauricio? Yes, sorry. Short for Mau.
Ten. Rule 2. Avoid using a column before a list if it directly follows a verb or preposition that would ordinarily need no punctuation in that sentence. Not recommended. I want butter, sugar, and flour. Recommended. I want butter, sugar, and flour. Or here is what I want: butter, sugar, and flour. Not
Yes.
recommended.
Continue, please.
Okay. I have seen the grits, including Barrymore, Guinness, and Strep. Recommended. I have seen the grits, including Barrymore, Guinness, and Strep.
Okay. So this one is a tricky one, right, Mauricio? So let's go by parts. Avoid using a column after a list if it is directly follows a verb or a preposition that would ordinarily need no punctuation in that sentence. Okay. So for example, the first one is easy because you're describing a list. I want, column, butter, sugar, and flour. Now, just don't use it. I want butter, sugar, and flour. And don't forget about the order of your comma. You have and, don't forget you have to use it. Or here is what I want. Now, if you want to use a column, you have to prepare your statement that you're going to talk about a list. And that's what we do here. Here is what I want. You're preparing the viewer or the listener that you're going to describe a list. That's when we use it. The next example, I've seen the greets, including Barrymore, Guinness, and Strip. Recommended. Oh, okay, the first one is not recommended. I've seen the greets, including Barrymore, Guinness, and Strip. Okay, because I've seen the greets, it's not preparing the statements, okay? You are just talking about it. Like in the first example, I want butter, sugar, and flour. You're not preparing people about a description. You are talking to yourself. That's what it's telling you. You see, I. And you start with first person. Here, yes, you talk about first person, but you prepare the people that you're going to talk about something, a list. Here is what I want. Rule 3. This is a long one. Anyone wants to give it a shot? Camila, perhaps?
Sure. Rule 3. When listing items one by one on one per line following a column, capitalization and ending punctuation are optional. When using single words or phrases preceded by letters, numbers, or bullet points. If each point is a complete sentence, capitalize the first word and end the sentence with an appropriate ending punctuation. Otherwise, there are no hard and fast rules, except be consistent. Examples. I want an assistant who can do the following. A. Input data. B. Write reports. C. Complete tax forms. The following are requested. Calm. Wool sweaters for possible cold water. Wetsuits for snorkeling. Introduction to the local dignitaries. These are the pool rules. Columns. Do not run. 2. If you see unsafe behavior, report it to lifeguard. 3. Did you remember your towel? 4. Have fun.
Awesome. Thank you, Camila. And guys, I gave you an example of this when I show you the syllabus, remember? Because I listed the objectives, right? I listed the objectives and I gave you in structural order. Let me open the file again so that I can show you. Oof, where is it? There. Sorry guys, my computer is a little bit old, so it's slow but trustworthy. Okay. So it's opening. Kudos. Okay. Let me show you. So here, I said module, objectives, and I have a column. But I can use it again because I'm talking about that unit. Okay. Because these module objectives describe all the units, but each unit is giving me a series of activities in a form of a list, and that's what Camila is talking about. The same as the course structure. I'm giving you a list of how we're going to process this class. Okie doke? Okay. So the last one, guys, okay? So rule 4, a column instead of a semicolon may be used between independent clauses when the second sentence explains, illustrates, paraphrases, or expands on the first sentence. Example, he got what he worked for. He really earned that promotion. If a complete sentence follows a column, as in previous example, authorities are divided over whether to capitalize the first word. Some writers and editors feel that capitalizing a complete sentence after a column is always advisable. Others advise against it. Still, others regard it as a judgmental call. If what follows the column is closely related to what precedes it, there is no need for a capital. But if what follows is general formal statement, many writers and editors capitalize the first word. So remember the old saying, be careful what you wish for. Okay, time out. So teacher, you mentioned that we don't use capital letters. In this case, you're telling me that yes? Hey, I don't make the rules, guys. You are using the information as best conveys the information. But I will stick to the previous rule. If you don't have to use capital letters, don't use them. Okay? That's what I do. I don't capitalize after columns. 5, capitalize the first word of a complete or full sentence quotation that follows a column. Now, everything changes when we have quotation marks. The host made an announcement, you are all staying for dinner. It's an exception. Capitalize the first word after a column if the information following the column requires 2 or more complete sentences. Okay. That gave us these rules to live by. Work hard, be honest, always show up on time. We're not using commas, we're using periods, but short expressions. Okay. This is literature, guys. 7. If a quotation contains 2 or more sentences, many writers and editors introduce it with a colon rather than a comma. Dad often said to me, work hard, be honest, always show up to me. So pretty much 7 is the same as 6. But the difference is we're quoting what other people said. Pretty much the same, only the quotations. I know this information now is looking a little bit tricky, but in the end, don't forget that there's some exceptions. If you have doubts, we can go back and check the information. Okay. And oh, we are only missing these 2. I said we were done, but I would like to finish with columns. 8. For extended quotations introduced by a column, some style manuals say to intend 1/2 inch or both the left and right margins. Others say to indent only on the left margin. Quotation marks are not used. The author of Touched, James Strauss, wrote in the first chapter, Georgia went back to her bed and stared at the intricate patterns of bird, moth, wings in the translucent glass of the overhead light. Her father was in hyper mode again, where nothing could calm him down. Okay. So in the end, all of this is just words. Blah, blah, blah. This is what counts right here. The author Touched, James Strauss, wrote in the first chapter. Okay, boom. This is my column. You're just giving a description. Okay, and this is information that we need when writing our essays. If we're going to give examples from articles. Don't forget, all of this is just blah, 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 blah. This is what counts right here. 9, use a column rather than a comma to follow the salutation in a business letter, even when addressing someone by his or her first name. Never use a semicolon after a salutation. The comma is used after the salutation in more informal correspondence. Example, formal, Dear Miss Rodriguez, and then colons. Informal, Dear Dave. And this is mostly used in letters, emails. I most certainly use this, guys. Dear Michael. Hi, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hello, team. I use a comma. I know it's very, very informal, but don't forget that you can use a column to be formal. And this is something we can start practicing already, guys, even if you use dear. Okay. I know there's a lot of questions, guys, but I must stop at this moment. If you require, I give you a copy of this information so you can take a look for tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to practice what we left on. Yes, I'll most certainly give you a copy of this, okay? Questions, guys? Don't forget to sign up for sessions for tomorrow. If there's no questions, that'll be all from my behalf, guys. Thanks so much for coming to class. I'll see you, or I will talk to you tomorrow.
See you, teacher.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. Bye, guys.
Thank you,
Teacher.
teacher. See you tomorrow.
Bye,
Teacher, y la
guys.
encuesta.
Yeah, teacher.
Bye, guys. Yes, Audrey?
La encuesta.
Let me see. Oh, yes, I have it. Nice. Can you complete it before you go? Thank you, Audrey.
Mhm.
I thought I didn't have it. If you completed the survey, guys, thanks so much. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Teacher, I'm sorry, I don't see the survey.
Me neither, teacher.
Really? Let me send the survey again. Give me just a second. Okay, now?
No, teacher.
What's going on? Nada. Clicking on sending again, perhaps. No?
Nope, I think that is not working, teacher.
Híjole. Not sure what's going on, guys. One person did complete the survey, but let me see. I'm gonna resend it.
Teacher, this work in other class when we nos exit and y cuando volvemos a entrar.
So I need to log in, log out and log in.
No.
Okay, let me log out and log in.